Hey everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm so glad you're here with me today. We've got an important topic to talk about, something we all experience but don't always handle well. Yep, you guessed it, stress. Now, stress is one of those things that everyone goes through at some point in their lives, whether it's because of work, school, relationships, or just everyday responsibilities. But have you ever stopped to think about what stress really is? And how do we talk about it in English? As we move through today's podcast, we're going to dive deeper into how stress affects us, how to cope with it, and we'll break down some common English idioms and phrases you can use to talk about stress like a native speaker. Sound good? Let's get into it. So, now that we've talked a bit about what stress is, let's get into some of the different kinds of stress and where they come from. Because, let's be honest, stress doesn't just show up in one form, right? It has many faces. First off, let's talk about work stress. I'm sure a lot of us can relate to this. Whether you're facing tight deadlines, juggling multiple tasks, or even dealing with difficult colleagues, it can feel like a lot of pressure. A phrase we often use in English is feeling under pressure. It's a perfect way to describe that overwhelming sense that there's just too much on your plate. Another common type is financial stress. This happens when you're worried about money, whether it's paying bills, saving up, or managing unexpected expenses. We often say, "I'm feeling the financial pinch," which means you're struggling to make ends meet. And let's not forget about relationship stress. This could be between friends, family members, or partners. We sometimes call it emotional stress because it's tied to feelings like frustration or misunderstanding. In English, when things get tough in a relationship, we say, "There's tension between us," or even, "We're on edge," meaning that both people are feeling stressed and might snap at any moment. Now, here's a fun idiom you might hear: burning the candle at both ends. This is when you're trying to do too much at once, like working late and waking up early without enough rest. It's a classic way to express the kind of stress that comes from overworking. Oh, and then there's this one, biting off more than you can chew. Ever feel like you've taken on too many responsibilities at once? That's what this idiom is all about. It's like trying to eat a huge piece of food but realizing it's way too much to handle. You can use this phrase when talking about taking on too many projects or commitments, and now you're feeling the weight of it. One important thing to notice is how we use the present perfect tense to talk about these ongoing stress experiences. For example, we often say, "I've been feeling stressed for the past few weeks." It's a great way to describe something that started in the past and is still affecting you now. So, if you want to explain how long your stress has been happening, this tense is super helpful. All right, so that covers the big ones: work, money, and relationships. But stress can come from all sorts of places. The key is recognizing where it's coming from and figuring out how to deal with it. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about next. All right, so now that we know what types of stress we're dealing with, the big question is, how do we cope with it? The good news is, there are plenty of ways to manage stress, and I'm going to share some of the most effective methods with you. One simple yet powerful way to handle stress is through deep breathing. It may sound too easy to be true, but taking slow, deep breaths can help calm your mind and body almost instantly. In English, we have a great phrase for this: take a breather. It's not just about breathing, though. It's also about taking a short break to relax and reset. So, if you're feeling overwhelmed at work, you can say, "I need to take a breather," meaning you need to step away for a moment to clear your head. Another popular way to deal with stress is through exercise. Whether it's going for a walk, hitting the gym, or even dancing around your living room, moving your body can help release tension. In fact, we often say we need to blow off steam. This idiom means to release built-up stress or anger, often by doing something physical. So, next time you're feeling stressed, try to get moving. It'll help you blow off some steam and feel better. Now, let's talk about keeping your cool. This is another way to say you're staying calm under pressure. For example, if you're in a stressful situation, you can say, "I'm trying to keep my cool," meaning you're staying calm even when things get tough. It's a really useful expression for those moments when you're feeling overwhelmed but don't want to let the stress show. Of course, there are also more structured ways to manage stress like meditation or time management. If you've ever tried meditation, you know it's all about focusing your mind and letting go of stressful thoughts. And when it comes to time management, it's about organizing your day so you don't feel so rushed or stressed. When giving advice on how to manage stress, we often use imperatives. These are commands or suggestions. For example, you might say, "Take a deep breath," or "Go for a walk," to someone who's feeling stressed. It's a direct but friendly way to encourage someone to take action. You can also use modals like should for softer advice, like, "You should try meditation," or "You should take a break." Both ways work depending on how strong you want your advice to be. So whether you're taking a breather, blowing off steam, or keeping your cool, there are plenty of ways to cope with stress. The trick is finding what works best for you and making it part of your routine. Let's keep going, and we'll dive into how stress affects our daily lives. And trust me, it's more than you might think. So, we've talked about coping with stress, but what happens when stress starts creeping into our everyday life? Well, it can affect just about everything, from how productive we are to how we interact with others. One of the first things stress impacts is our productivity. Have you ever noticed that when you're stressed, it's harder to focus or get things done? That's because stress can lead to fatigue, which is a fancy word for feeling really tired, both physically and mentally. When you're exhausted, it's tough to stay motivated, and even the simplest tasks can feel overwhelming. Stress can also make us more irritable. This means we get annoyed or frustrated more easily, and it can affect our relationships with the people around us. You might snap at someone for no reason, or feel like little things that wouldn't normally bother you are suddenly a big deal. That's why we say stress doesn't just affect you, it affects those around you too. And let's not forget about mental health. When stress builds up, it can lead to bigger issues like anxiety or even depression. This is why it's so important to manage stress before it takes over. In English, we often talk about stress using cause and effect. For example, you can say, "If you don't manage your stress, it can lead to burnout." This is a conditional sentence. It shows what happens if you don't take action. You might also hear, "If you're constantly stressed, it will affect your health." Notice how we use the if-then structure to show the link between stress and its impact on daily life. So, stress doesn't just make us feel overwhelmed in the moment. It can have long-term effects if we don't manage it well. But don't worry, next up, we'll talk about how to stay positive and find some balance, even during stressful times. Now, let's shift gears a little and talk about something really important: how we can talk about stress in a positive way. Because while stress can feel overwhelming, the way we think and talk about it can make a big difference in how we handle it. One phrase I love is turning stress into strength. Instead of seeing stress as something negative, you can think of it as a challenge, an opportunity to grow. For example, when you're feeling the pressure of a deadline, you could say, "This is tough, but it's going to make me more organized," or "I'm learning to handle challenges better." These simple mindset shifts help you see stress as something you can overcome, not something that controls you. Another useful phrase is learning to thrive under pressure. It means you don't just survive stressful situations, you thrive. You succeed and grow because of them. In English, this phrase is often used to describe people who perform well when the stakes are high. You could say, "I tend to thrive under pressure," which shows that you handle stressful situations well. We also talk about building resilience, which is the ability to bounce back after tough times. Think of it like a muscle. The more you face and manage stress, the stronger and more resilient you become. So, if you're going through a difficult time, you can remind yourself, "I'm building resilience," meaning you're getting stronger and better able to handle stress in the future. There's also the idea of using stress as motivation. Instead of feeling stuck, you can reframe stress as something that pushes you to get things done. A common phrase you might hear is, "I'm using this stress as fuel to stay focused and reach my goals." It's about turning that anxious energy into action. And here's a quick grammar tip. When we're talking about positive actions we're taking in stressful situations, we often use the present continuous tense. For example, I'm learning to manage stress, or I'm working on building resilience. This tense shows that these are ongoing processes, not something that happens overnight, but something you're actively doing. So, even though stress is something we all deal with, the way we talk about it and the mindset we have can help us turn it into something positive and manageable. Let's wrap things up by talking about how we can take what we've learned today and apply it in our daily lives. So, as we've explored today, stress is a part of life, but it doesn't have to control us. From understanding where stress comes from to learning how to manage it and even talk about it positively, we've covered some great ways to make stress something we can handle and even grow from. The key takeaway is that stress can be a tool for growth when we approach it with the right mindset. Whether it's through deep breathing, exercise, or building resilience, there are so many ways we can turn stress into something that helps us, rather than something that holds us back. Remember, you're not alone in feeling stressed. What's important is how you respond to it. I hope you found these tips helpful and that you feel more confident about dealing with stress in a healthy way. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to learn more about managing stress or improving your English skills, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We've got plenty of great content coming your way, and I'd love for you to join the conversation. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Stay calm, stay positive, and I'll see you in the next episode.